being fulfilled. It was up to his son, Stephen F. Austin, to carry out his plans. This was a time of great change around the world. Empires were crumbling, revolution was in the air. The people of Mexico rose up in revolt against the Spanish. They wanted the same liberties that our American neighbors had won in 1776. And so in 1821, after years of fighting, Mexico won its independence. Tejas now became part of Mexico, and Stephen F. Austin's colonization contract needed confirmation from the new government. With that in mind, he set out for Mexico City.
I arrived without friends, ignorant of the language and the laws. I found the city in an unsettled state, the country still agitated by the revolution.
After 2 more years of political turmoil, Austin's contract was finally confirmed. The following year, the Mexican government adopted the Constitution of 1824. Modeled after the U.S. Constitution, it was widely endorsed by the citizens of Tejas. Then, a disturbing change. The Mexican Congress passed a law establishing a new province, Coahuila y Tejas. It combined Tejas with the neighboring province of Coahuila, where only a handful of American settlers lived. Saltillo in Coahuila, not Tejas, became the capital, and Tejas was given little representation in the provincial government. Still, at the time, these seemed small compromises in exchange for the rights the colonists now enjoyed under the laws of Mexico. Stephen F. Austin so welcomed his new government that he became fluent in the Spanish language and officially changed his first name to Esteban.
Este gobierno es el más generoso del mundo. En cambio, por ciudadanía americana y por conversión a la fe católica, el gobierno le concede a cada familia en exceso de 4,000 leguas de tierra, libre de derechos y contribuciones por 10 años.
By 1830, immigrants from the United States outnumbered native Mexicans in Tejas 4-1. Those numbers alarmed the Mexican government. And so on April 6, 1830, the policy was changed, forbidding Americans and encouraging non-Americans to immigrate. The army was sent in to enforce the laws. The era of goodwill between colonists and the Mexican government was ended. Rallies and calls for a separate statehood within Mexico grew more and more common. In May of 1832, while protesting the actions of the Mexican commander, William Barrett Travis and Patrick Jack were arrested at Anahuac. This further fueled the fires of discontent. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, political unrest continued. Early in 1833, an ambitious general, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, became the new president of Mexico. He was arrogant and vain, calling himself the Napoleon of the West. Still, the Texans believed he was sympathetic to their cause. In April of 1833, they took a bold step. They drafted a petition demanding that Tejas be made a separate Mexican province independent from Coahuila. An optimistic Stephen F. Austin took the petition to Santa Ana in Mexico City. Once again, he found the government in chaos. Receiving no reply to his petition, Austin vented his frustration in a letter home.
There is no doubt but that the fate of Texas depends upon itself and not upon this government. The country is lost if its inhabitants do not take its affairs into their own hands.
The letter fell into government hands. Austin was charged with treason, thrown into prison, and Coahuila y Tejas was placed under martial law. Santa Anna was disregarding the Constitution of 1824. He had become a dictator. In June 1835, another skirmish in Anahuac brought Santa Anna's brother-in-law, General Martin Perfecto de Cos, marching into Tejas. That fall, when Stephen F. Austin finally returned home from prison, he was a changed man. The arrival of Cos and his troops in Tejas prompted a violent outburst against Santa Anna.
He is a base, unprincipled, bloody monster. War is our only resource. No halfway measures, but war in full.
During the second half of 1835, frequent skirmishes and confrontations heated up emotions on both sides to a fighting fury. Cos, commanding San Antonio, was attacked. On December 10th, 1835, after 5 days of fierce house-to-house fighting, he surrendered. The Texans sent him and his men back to Mexico. Finally, in January of 1836, Santa Anna stormed into Tejas with an army of 6,000 recruits and seasoned veterans, intending to wipe out every shred of rebel resistance. The main Texan line of defense ran from San Antonio to Goliad. The Mexican forces headed to both of these points. General Urrea to La Bahia, Goliad, and Santa Anna to San Antonio. The first Mexican troops reached San Antonio on February 23rd. A determined band of fighting men, including Colonel William Travis, Jim Bowie, and Davy Crockett, retreated behind the walls of an abandoned mission at the edge of town. The Alamo. Santa Anna arrived on February 24th and demanded complete, unconditional surrender. Travis gave him an answer that became the rallying cry for the Texas Revolution.
The enemy has demanded surrender. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly. I shall never surrender or retreat.
As Mexican soldiers streamed into San Antonio, a call to arms echoed across the land. Texas forever. Meanwhile, in a crude building in Washington on the Brazos River, elected delegates from all over Tejas met in convention. Despite all the talk of independence, Tejas had continued to support the Mexican Constitution of 1824. The time to change was at hand. The delegates officially declared independence on March the 2nd, 1836, drafting and adopting a constitution, not for the province of Tejas, but for the Republic of Texas. They elected David G. Burnett, President of the Republic, and Lorenzo de Zavala, Vice President. Thomas J. Rusk was appointed Secretary of War, and Sam Houston, Commander-in-Chief of the Army. As a young man, Houston had served bravely under Andrew Jackson in the Creek Indian Wars. President Jackson remained his close friend. Houston eventually became governor of Tennessee. In 1829, his new marriage abruptly ended, and Houston left the governor's mansion a broken man. He'd come to Tejas for a chance to make a new start. As commander-in-chief, he thought it. Houston left Washington and rode west toward Gonzales, hoping against hope that there'd be time enough to save the Alamo. There wasn't. The Alamo fell on March the 6th, 1836, after a brutal 13-day pounding. Its 189 defenders fought to the end. Between 600 and 1,000 Mexican soldiers died with them. Santa Anna viewed it as a glorious triumph. He confidently divided his army and pushed toward the east, threatening to drive every last rebel out of Texas. His plan was simple, but deadly. With all Texas settlements within about 100 miles of the Gulf Coast, 3 well-equipped Mexican forces would sweep Texas clean. The southern force would be 1,400 men under General Jose Francisco Urrea. Across the north, General Antonio Galvez was ordered to march with another 700 to Pasco and Nacogdoches. General Joaquin Ramirez y Sesma, followed by Santa Anna himself, would ride on to Gonzales and then Dewey's with 2,000 men. The Texas Army fought in the middle could be annihilated. Back in Gonzales with a few hundred disorganized troops, Houston learned the terrible news. The Alamo fallen, Travis's men butchered, the Mexicans on the march. He quickly made his decision. Fall back to the banks of the Colorado. Houston's weary men slogged east. They crossed the Colorado on March 19th and made camp on the other side. They were tired and hungry. It was high time to fight. Then came more bad news from the south near Goliad. The other Texas force, 400 well-armed men under James Fannin, had surrendered to Urrea following an all-day battle. Houston at once ordered a retreat to the Brussels. The Texas Army was at peak strength in the Colorado. Never again would it have so many men. As they retreated and left in droves.
Thank God.
Meanwhile, the new Texas government had left Washington and set out for Harrisburg, a safer, more central location. The panic grew. Settlers were leaving their homes and heading east as fast as they could in what became known as the Runaway Spring. The day after arriving at San Felipe on the Brazos, Houston turned his troops north to a point opposite Grosse's plantation. A week later, Santa Anna reached San Felipe. For reasons that may never be understood, he turned south to Richmond to cross the Brazos, a lucky break for the Texans. But the good fortune was short-lived. While camped at Grosse's plantation, bad news again caught up with Houston, once again from Goliad. Houston learned that on March 27th, Palm Sunday, Fannin's troops had been marched out of town. And then went quietly, thinking they were being released. But in fact, there were other plans. General Urrea and his troops were outraged at Santa Anna's orders, which were to carry them out. Fannin and all but a handful of his men were massacred in cold blood. The execution broke all Mexican codes of military honor, and 350 more martyrs joined the men from the Alamo. Meanwhile, Santa Anna had reached the river crossing at Richmond. Although he knew that Houston's army was upriver, he elected to go after a bigger prize, the Texas government, just 30 miles away at Harrisburg. In particular, Santa Anna wanted to capture Vice President Lorenzo de Zavala, a former Mexican. Santa Anna felt he had the Texans on the run, and he was eager to put an end to the whole cold and miserable campaign. On April 14th, he made a fatal mistake. Taking only 750 men, he pushed well ahead of his main forces. Houston, meanwhile, was training and reorganizing his men. Across the river from Grosses, they had time to rest and move to practice maneuvers. Better still, two small cannon, nicknamed the Twin Sisters, arrived as they were leaving Grosses. A gift from the people of Cincinnati. But Houston's reluctance to fight was gnawing at his men. Open mutiny was a pistol shot away. Worse yet, he stubbornly refused to discuss his plans. On the evening of April 13th, they left Grosses and continued east, the men barely under his control. 3 days later, they reached a fateful fork in the road. A turn left would mean still another retreat. Turn right, Fort Harrisburg would indicate that the long-awaited battle was at hand. And so the Texas Army set out upon the right-hand road. Santa Anna was also on the move. On April 15th, he reached Harrisburg at 10 o'clock at night. The Texas government had left by steamboat at noon the same day. Furious, Santa Anna ordered the town burned to the ground. On the 17th, Mexican dragoons again came within a hair's breadth of capturing key members of the Texas government as it retreated from New Washington. But the Mexican commander, Colonel Juan Almonte, chivalrously ordered his troops to hold their fire when he spied President Burnett's wife in the fleeing boat. On the 18th, Santa Anna reached New Washington, while the Texas Army camped on the north side of Buffalo Bayou across. There, Texas scouts intercepted a Mexican messenger with dispatches for Santa Anna. The Texans learned that Santa Anna was about to leave for Lynch's Ferry with less than 1,000 troops. This was the chance Houston had been waiting for, as even as the odds would ever be. He gathered his men together and delivered a stirring speech.
Victory is certain. Trust in God and fear not. The victims of the Alamo and the names of those who were murdered at Goliad cry out for vengeance.
On the 19th, the Texas Army took the road to Lynchburg. They marched all night, and just after dawn on the 20th, they took possession of Lynch's Ferry. At 8 o'clock that same morning, Santa Anna put the torch to New Washington and set off on the road to San Jacinto. Noticing increased Mexican scout activity, the Texans countermarched about a mile and occupied a dense wood. Behind them curved Buffalo Bayou. In front of them lay a peaceful prairie, a mile of grass as high as a man's knees. Hidden in a dense grove of oak trees, they waited. And shortly after noon, Santa Anna arrived. Santa Anna orders the lead company to drop its packs in place along the road. Forming a skirmish line, they move forward, probing the Texas position. The Mexicans fall back as the two sides exchange cannon fire. Sidney Sherman leads the Texas cavalry in an attempt to capture the Mexican gun. Santa Anna orders 3 companies of infantry out in support. The Texans fall back into their camp. The skirmish ends as quickly as it began. Sam Houston still isn't ready to fight. But the Texas soldiers are